Good, thanks. How are you doing?
Good. Sorry about that. We had
Oh,
activity.
no worries at all. Okay, so this is working. I'll just go get Bill. You guys are ready?
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
we are totally ready.
Thank you. Hold on one
Thank
second.
you.
And also, we want her to be, all you heard is right.
Bill? They're all screen.
Where are you going? Kevin.
Hello.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Let's see. Hello.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Good. I'm wondering if I can. I'd rather hear you directly. I wonder if I unplug this, just so I can hear on the radio. Just give me 1 second, okay?
Okay.
Want to speak now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
I hear you. I was just trying to see if it worked. If it worked on.
Yeah.
I hear you. I wanted to see if it worked on the without the headphones. But,
Right.
anyways, here it doesn't work without the headphones. So that's good.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for making time for us. We really appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure.
And congrats on the book.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a long and arduous process, but one I'm finally happy to have completed. It feels like
Yeah.
I think the hardest thing.
We're a book publishing, trade magazine. So I'll ask you some questions about how the book was made, and
Sure.
some more general questions. And so we'll talk for about 10 minutes or so, and then edit this down to the best parts, and then put it on our website.
Great. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. So, obviously there's a very dramatic story here. It works really well as a book, but I could also see you, giving talks or sort of behind the scenes lobbying Congress for the act that was eventually passed, or maybe being the subject of a documentary. What was it?
Hello? I just lost you there. Hello?
Oh, can you hear me now?
I hear you now, yeah.
Okay.
I lost you after a documentary.
Yeah. So it works really well as a book, but what made you want to write it in the form of a book?
Basically, there's sort of this. There's three parts of my campaign for justice for Sergei Magnitsky. The first is a political prong, which is about getting sanctions legislation passed in different countries. The second is a criminal justice prong, which is where we've been helping different law enforcement agencies around the world investigate and seize the assets of the money launderers that laundered the money that Sergei Magnitsky discovered was stolen from Russia. And the third angle, which is coming to your question, is a media aspect, where originally we said to ourselves, we need to tell this story to the world, and we went to the newspapers. And I quickly discovered that the best newspapers in the world, the Financial Times, New York Times, etc., really very, very few people actually read those papers in reality. And even if people do read those papers, the chances that they've read the article that were so hard to get into the newspaper is pretty slim. And then if they did, chances that they spent more than 45 seconds to a minute on the article is even smaller. And so you end up in a situation where you really don't get much people's share of their attention. And so I said to myself, if I could actually write a book that people want to read, I get them for 8 to 10 hours. And so I said to myself, it's a very ambitious project to get somebody to spend 8 to 10 hours with me. But I set out to do that, and I said to myself, this book has to be a book that people want to read from cover to cover. And I have about 20 books on my bedside table where I've read the first 30 to 50 pages and just put them aside because I got bored. And I said to myself, this book can't be like that. And so it was the hardest thing I've ever done to come up with a explanation of the story that would be interesting from start to finish. But from the feedback I've gotten, most people say, wow, Bill, I stayed up late, I missed my subway stop, etc., to get there. So I feel pretty much like I've achieved the objective.
Yeah. So I think that some people think that writing is a process for the writer where the writer can sort of psychologically resolve whatever issues they're facing. But really, it seems like, and particularly in your case, that the writing of this book might have been painful. Is that true?
Yeah, there's no question that, I mean, in the book there's sort of two halves. There's the fun half, and then there's the terror half. And the fun half was fun to write, and it was fun to recollect, and it was fun to engage with people from that part of my life to go over the details and the conversations and so on. And the terror half was just terrible and terrifying, and it felt bad, and it felt bad for weeks going over, sitting with Sergei Magnitsky's widow and his mother, going over what happened and rehashing it and putting together the chronology, and none of us felt good. But it was important to do, but that was definitely not a fun thing to do, or not a fun thing to write.
Right, and a lot of writers will at least do an event, maybe have a book tour. Is that possible in your case because of the security concerns?
Well, there's different ways of doing a book tour. So I'm not going around and sort of sitting in bookstores in random cities signing books. Just because I can't be sort of sitting in front of random people, who knows who's going to approach me. But it doesn't mean I can't go around to different countries and different cities and speak to the media and speak to select groups of people who are interested in the subject. And so I am traveling. I was just in America and on my way to Germany and Holland to do the same thing. And so I'm definitely doing a book tour, but it's just probably not your conventional book tour like you might find for a non-controversial nonfiction writer or something like that. Hello?
Yeah.
You get that?
Yes, I did. Thank you. So I saw that the New York Times had said that they wrote that Mr. Browder makes an unlikely hero and an even more unlikely capitalist. What did you think about that line?
I think they're right. I mean, it's pretty rare that you find hedge fund managers becoming human rights activists, or hedge fund managers doing anything that would be considered heroic. And so I fully sympathize with where they're coming from. And having been in that world, I think there's not a lot of heroic characters. I didn't write this to be considered a hero. I didn't write this for myself at all. I wrote this as what I would call a literary monument for my friend and colleague Sergei Magnitsky, who died a terrible death. If people like how I've conducted myself, I'm glad they do. If people don't, that's okay as well. I mean, this is really not about me. It's about making sure that his story and his legacy and how he was persecuted becomes a historic matter of record.
Yeah. So, last question: do you have another book in mind, or was this one enough?
This was the most painful thing I've ever done in my life. It's truly the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than passing a law in Congress. Harder than starting the largest investment fund in Russia. So for the moment, I'm just going to decompress and recover from the exercise. I mean, I did learn a lot from writing this book, and perhaps if I were to write another book, it would be easier, but I have nothing more in mind at the moment. The next step is to take this book to the big screen in Hollywood. I think that in terms of touching a larger audience, there's a lot of people who don't read who do watch movies, and so that's sort of the next step. But who knows? I wouldn't rule out another book if there's enough to say at some point. But as one of my author friends who I consulted before doing this said to me, you have to have a very, very good reason to write a book, because most reasons people write books don't justify the the absolute pain involved in doing it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Well, thanks so much, Bill. Congrats again on the book, and thanks for your time, and have a good night.
Thank you very much. You too.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.